There are few names in history that echo with the same force as Sparta. Across the centuries, the word has come to mean discipline, courage, and sacrifice. The Spartans were not merely soldiers, they were the embodiment of an ideal, the belief that freedom and survival are worth any price, even life itself. Nestled in the rugged hills of Laconia in southern Greece, Sparta was unlike any other city-state of the ancient world. While Athens built its glory upon philosophy, art, and democracy, Sparta built its greatness upon the sword. To the Spartans, war was not a calamity to be endured. It was the natural condition of man. Every aspect of Spartan life revolved around the needs of the state and the demands of war. From the moment a child took its first breath, its worth was measured by its strength. From that day forward, life was a relentless training for one purpose: to serve and, if necessary, to die for Sparta. For centuries, the Spartans forged themselves into the most feared military force in Greece, a society where weakness was a crime and excellence was the only virtue. Their discipline was unmatched, their tactics revolutionary, and their courage immortalized in legend. But behind the legend lies a story both inspiring and tragic, of a people who surrendered everything to become perfect soldiers, only to discover that perfection came at the price of their soul. Sparta's origins trace back to the Dorian invasion around the 9th century BCE, when northern tribes swept into the Peloponnese and conquered the fertile valley of the Eurotas River. The invaders subdued the native population, turning them into serfs known as helots, a vast underclass who farmed the land and provided for their Spartan masters. It was this conquest, and the constant fear of revolt, that shaped Sparta's destiny. Unlike other Greek city-states that expanded outward through trade or colonization, Sparta turned inward. Its people became soldiers not out of ambition, but out of necessity. To control a population of helots that vastly outnumbered them, the Spartans had to become a permanent military caste, disciplined, united, and ruthless. War was not an occasional enterprise, it was the foundation of their society. At the top of this rigid hierarchy stood the Spartiates, the full citizens of Sparta. Beneath them were the perioikoi, free non-citizens who worked as craftsmen and traders, and at the bottom, the helots, bound to the land they tilled. The state itself was governed by a unique system, a dual kingship, with two hereditary kings ruling simultaneously, one often leading armies in war, while the other remained at home to govern. Supporting them was a Gerousia, council of elders, the ephors, powerful overseers, and an assembly of citizens. But make no mistake, Sparta was not a democracy in any modern sense. It was a military oligarchy, a state built for war and sustained by control. As the historian Xenophon later wrote in admiration, Lycurgus, the lawgiver, found Sparta free but disorderly. He made it most orderly, and most free. Freedom in Sparta meant something very different from elsewhere in Greece. It did not mean personal liberty or individual expression. It meant the freedom of the state, the collective independence of Sparta, secured by the unyielding obedience of its citizens. Every law, every ritual, every breath was dedicated to that singular goal, to make the Spartans unbreakable. If Sparta's greatness rested on its warriors, those warriors were born in the Agoge, the brutal state-run training system that molded boys into soldiers. From birth, the child's fate was determined by the elders of the tribe. Weak or deformed infants were cast aside, a grim practice intended to ensure only the strongest survived. Those who passed this first test of worthiness were returned to their mothers, but their childhood would be short-lived. At age 7, a Spartan boy was taken from his family and enrolled in the Agoge. From that day onward, his life belonged to the state. The Agoge was not merely a school, it was a crucible. Boys were divided into units under the supervision of older youths and drilled relentlessly in endurance, obedience, and combat. They were taught to read and write only enough to understand commands, for Sparta valued deeds over words. Their clothing was minimal, a single cloak regardless of the season. They slept on reeds gathered by hand and were deliberately underfed to encourage cunning and resourcefulness. Stealing food was permitted, even encouraged, but being caught was punished harshly, not for the theft but for the failure to escape detection. Pain was a lesson, endurance was honor, The body and the will were hardened together until nothing remained but discipline. The boys learned to fight with spear and shield, to wrestle, run, and march for miles under the burning sun. Every day was a test of courage and composure. They were taught not to cry out in pain, not to show fear, not to break formation. Silence was prized. A Spartan's words were few but cutting, giving rise to the term laconic speech. When a foreigner once complained that the Spartan reply to his long letter was too brief, a warrior answered simply, "No word wasted." The Agoge also forged brotherhood, the bonds of loyalty that would hold Spartan ranks together in battle. Each boy was paired with an older mentor who guided and watched over him, teaching the ways of discipline, strategy, and restraint. At age 20, those who survived the Agoge entered the ranks of the homoioi, the equals. They became full soldiers, living in communal barracks, eating at common messes called syssitia, and dedicating their entire existence to the service of Sparta. Marriage was allowed, but even then, a Spartan soldier did not live with his wife until he turned 30. His loyalty, first and foremost, was to his unit. His life belonged to the phalanx. As Plutarch wrote centuries later, from their youth they were accustomed to neither be overfed nor idle, to be always under the eye of authority, and to endure both hunger and pain. By the age of 20, the Spartan boy had become a man, but more importantly, a soldier. Now he entered the world of the barracks, where the lessons of the Agoge were put into lifelong practice. These communal halls, called syssitia, were more than simple quarters. They were the living heart of Spartan brotherhood. Here men ate, trained, debated, and slept together. Here they forged the unity that would make them the most formidable fighting force of the ancient world. A Spartan's daily life was one of routine and rigor. The mornings began with physical training, running, wrestling, and mock combat. Afternoons were spent drilling in formation, sharpening weapons, or practicing tactics under the unforgiving gaze of their superiors. Meals were simple, often consisting of barley bread, cheese, and the infamous black broth, a mix of pork, blood, and vinegar. Foreigners who tasted it recoiled, but Spartans believed that those who train for war should eat what makes them strong, not what pleases the tongue. Every man was expected to live with restraint and discipline. Luxury was forbidden. Gold and silver coinage were replaced by heavy iron bars, making wealth itself impractical. This rejection of comfort was deliberate to prevent greed, corruption, and softness from eroding the Spartan ideal. But within this austerity, there was deep camaraderie. The Spartan phalanx was built not merely on strategy, but on trust, on the knowledge that every man would stand his ground for the comrade at his side. This unity was reinforced by shared meals, shared hardship, and shared purpose. In the dark of the barracks, men whispered not of wealth or fame, but of honor, duty, and the glory of dying for their city. A Spartan mother's farewell to her son was simple and cold. With your shield or on it. Return victorious or return dead. There was no third option. To understand Spartan might, one must understand its structure. A machine of war perfected over centuries. The Spartan army was a professional, standing force, rare in a world where most Greek states relied on part-time citizen soldiers. Every Spartan male was a soldier first and a citizen second. The army was organized with mathematical precision. At its core were the homoioi, full Spartan citizens trained from birth for war. They were supported by the perioikoi, free men who handled logistics and occasionally fought as light infantry. The helots, meanwhile, served as laborers and attendants, carrying supplies and arms, though some, called mothekis, could fight alongside Spartans in exceptional cases. A typical Spartan battle formation was composed of units called enomotiai, platoons, grouped into larger divisions known as morae. Each mora, commanded by a polemarch, could field up to 600 men. Command flowed seamlessly from the kings, who often led in person, down through the captains to the lowest ranks. Orders were obeyed without hesitation, for in Sparta, disobedience was a greater shame than death. Every soldier fought in the phalanx, a tight formation of overlapping shields and projecting spears. In this wall of bronze, individuality vanished. The strength of each man became the strength of the unit. The Spartan army was more than a collection of warriors. It was a living organism, breathing and moving as one. The Spartan warrior's appearance on the battlefield was both practical and terrifying, a symbol of disciplined death. Each soldier carried the aspis, a large round shield made of wood and bronze bearing the letter lambda for Lacedaemon, their homeland. It was the heaviest piece of equipment, weighing nearly 15 kilograms, but it was also the soul of the Spartan warrior. The aspis protected not just the man who bore it, but the comrade to his left. To drop it was unthinkable, for it meant betraying the formation. Their primary weapon was the doru, a spear around 2.5 meters long, fitted with a bronze spearhead and a butt spike for balance, or for finishing off a fallen foe. For close combat, they carried the xiphos, a short iron sword, or sometimes the curved kopis, ideal for slashing in tight formations. Armor varied over the centuries. In the classical period, Spartans wore the linothorax, a layered linen cuirass stiffened with glue and resin, offering both flexibility and protection. A bronze helmet, often of the Corinthian type, covered the head, leaving only the eyes visible through narrow slits, giving the Spartan his iconic, almost inhuman visage. Their crimson cloaks and polished bronze armor gleamed under the sun, not for beauty but for intimidation. The red dye was said to hide blood, so that the wounded would not appear weak. In battle, the Spartan phalanx advanced slowly, step by step, shields locked, spears bristling forward. The rhythm of marching boots and the low hum of the paean, the war song, filled the air. When they met the enemy, the impact was like a thunderclap, the front lines smashed together in a test of strength and discipline. In this grinding press of men and metal, courage alone was not enough. It was precision, unity, and will that decided victory. No army in Greece could match the Spartans in maintaining formation under pressure. They moved as if one mind controlled 1,000 bodies. Spartan warfare was not merely brute force. It was an art form refined through centuries of conflict. Their tactics emphasized control, coordination, and timing. The Spartans understood that the phalanx's strength lay in unity. A single break in formation could doom an army. For that reason, their drills were endless, their discipline absolute. They rarely pursued a fleeing enemy recklessly. They advanced deliberately, maintaining cohesion at all costs. They preferred terrain that limited the enemy's mobility, narrow passes, hills, or plains bordered by obstacles that prevented encirclement. Their training also extended beyond the battlefield. Spartan generals were masters of psychological warfare. They used silence as a weapon. While other armies shouted and taunted before battle, the Spartans advanced wordlessly, unnerving their foes. As Plutarch wrote, "They go into battle to the music of flutes, calmly, in order and without confusion, for their training has removed all fear." Every movement, every sound, every glance was choreographed toward victory. The Battle of Thermopylae stands as the eternal embodiment of Spartan courage and discipline. King Leonidas led 300 Spartans and roughly 7,000 allied Greek soldiers against the vast Persian army of Xerxes, numbering in the hundreds of thousands. The narrow pass of Thermopylae neutralized the Persians' overwhelming numerical advantage, forcing them to attack in confined formations where numbers counted for little. The Spartans formed an impenetrable phalanx, each warrior's shield protecting both himself and his comrade. Every man knew his life was pledged not only to Sparta, but to the brother beside him. With every thrust of their spears, the Spartans held back Xerxes' seemingly endless army. With every breath, they carved their immortality into history. Leonidas's ultimate sacrifice became a symbol of bravery, inspiring all of Greece to resist Persian domination. Thermopylae was not only a military stand, but a profound act of moral defiance. Although famed for their land prowess, the Spartans also contributed to critical naval engagements during the Persian Wars. At the naval battle of Salamis, the Spartans coordinated with the Athenians to trap the Persian fleet in narrow straits. Greek triremes, agile and tightly formed, exploited the confined waters where the Persians' numerical superiority became a liability. Spartan leadership and discipline were vital, ensuring that the Greek forces maintained cohesion against a vastly larger fleet. Salamis demonstrated that strategic coordination and morale could overcome the sheer weight of enemy numbers. It was a battle won as much by cunning as by force. The Battle of Plataea sealed the Persian defeat in Greece. Spartan forces under Pausanias held the center alongside their allies, forming phalanxes that crushed the Persian lines. Their tactical precision allowed the Greeks to turn a smaller force into a decisive advantage. Plataea showcased the Spartans' mastery of both strategy and morale. Their disciplined advance shattered the Persian army and ensured Greek freedom. Plataea proved that Spartan soldiers were not just fighters, they were strategic instruments capable of reshaping entire campaigns. Sparta's greatest battles were not always quick or decisive. Some were tests of endurance and patience. During the Peloponnesian War, Spartans faced the Athenians in both land and naval engagements. Their victories often came through prolonged sieges, strategic positioning, and careful use of allies. Even in apparent stalemates, Sparta's discipline, patience, and tactical adaptability allowed them to gradually erode Athenian power. The Peloponnesian War illustrated that true military power combines strategy, patience, and discipline, not just raw force. At Leuctra, Sparta met a new power, Thebes, and for the first time, its phalanx met defeat. The Theban general Epaminondas used an innovative tactic, a deep, concentrated wedge that shattered the Spartan right flank. The myth of Spartan invincibility died that day, and with it the golden age of Sparta. Spartan women were unlike any others in Greece. While elsewhere women were confined to domestic life, Spartan women were strong, educated, and outspoken because the state needed them to be. With men constantly away at war or training, women managed estates, oversaw helots, and ensured that Spartan society functioned. They were trained in athletics and endurance from youth, believing that strong women would bear strong children. They spoke their minds freely and were known to mock cowardice. A Spartan mother could hand her son his shield and say, "Return with it or on it," not as cruelty, but as the highest expression of duty. Their independence shocked other Greeks, but it was integral to the Spartan way. They were the silent pillars behind the warrior state. Victory in the Peloponnesian War left Sparta supreme, but power corrupted what discipline had built. Wealth flowed into the city, softening the iron of its traditions. The equality among citizens eroded as some amassed riches, while others fell into debt. The rigid structure of the homoioi began to crumble. The defeat at Leuctra shattered Sparta's military prestige. The helots revolted, and the once feared army dwindled in number. By the time of Rome's rise, Sparta was no longer a power, but a relic, admired, imitated, but no longer feared. The city that had sought perfection in war could not survive peace. Though Sparta fell, its legend endures. To this day, the name Spartan conjures images of courage, discipline, and sacrifice. From military academies to modern armies, the spirit of the Spartan soldier remains a symbol of duty and endurance. Their story reminds us that freedom demands vigilance, and that strength without wisdom can destroy as easily as it defends. The Spartans did not build monuments of marble or poetry. Their monument was their way of life. As Simonides wrote of Thermopylae, "Their glory will not fade, nor their name grow dim." And so, more than 2,000 years later, the red cloaks of Sparta still march through history, not as conquerors, but as eternal guardians of an ideal,